What if the woman cleaning the conference room knew more about the company's future than the CEO himself? When a forgotten janitor discovered a secret clause buried in a German contract, she didn't just risk her job. She ignited a corporate revolution. But how did a mop-wielding nobody become the voice that exposed a multi-million-dollar fraud? Stay with us, because the most shocking part of this story is still to come. No one at Brightwell Electronics cared who cleaned the boardrooms until the janitor read a contract that could destroy them all. It was a bitter February morning in Springfield, Ohio, when Clare Dawson trudged through slushy snow, pulling her worn coat tighter against the wind. The bus had broken down again, and she was now racing the clock on foot. One more tardy report, and Linda, the director's icy secretary, would file an official complaint. And Clare couldn't afford to lose this job. Not with her mother barely walking, and medical bills stacking up like snowdrifts. She arrived at the fated gates of Brightwell Electronics plant. Once a symbol of American innovation, now just another aging industrial relic fighting to survive. The welcome sign was peeling, and the windows were as tired as the workers behind them. But the chimneys still breathed. That meant the heart of the factory was still beating. Inside, old Frank Coleman, the security guard who used to be a lead engineer, saluted her with a wink. "Morning, Claire. Big day today. Germans are coming." "Investors?" she asked, brushing snow off her sleeves. He nodded gravely. "From Dusseldorf. Rumor says if this deal falls through, we shut down by summer." Claire swallowed. That would mean more than just lost paychecks, it would be the final nail in this town's coffin. In the janitor's break room, the bleach burned her nose. Martha Jenkins, the head of cleaning staff, barked orders with her usual mix of gruff affection. "We're scrubbing the executive floor today. Director Kane wants every inch to shine, even the damn door handles." Because some suits from Europe need to be dazzled by disinfectant, Claire muttered, tying on her apron. As she made her way up to the top floor, a wave of emotions crept over her. This place used to represent everything she had dreamed of. 10 years ago, she had been a senior at the University of Cincinnati, double majoring in German and legal translation. Professors praised her instincts. "Clare Dawson," one had said, "you have a gift for language and law. You're going places." But then her mother, Margaret, fell. A collapsed spine. Chronic arthritis. Medical debt crushed their future like a car hitting a deer on an icy road. Claire dropped out, took on every job she could. Her dream left behind in some university hallway, gathering dust. Now she polished floors while others sealed deals. That day, as she cleaned the executive conference room, her eyes caught a sheet of paper resting atop a clutter of coffee-stained files. It wasn't the stains that froze her. It was the header. Schultz GmbH, sharp, clean font. Legal terminology. She couldn't help it. Her eyes scanned the first few lines. Her brain, long starved of academic challenge, roared to life. Asterisk agreement of share transfer. Upon the discovery of financial misrepresentation, the managing director may be removed and replaced by an interim executive proficient in German and trained in legal protocol. Asterisk. Claire's heart stuttered. Was this real? Suddenly, a voice boomed from behind her. Well, what do we have here?" Richard Kane, the director of Brightwell, stepped into the room, arms crossed, face flushed with suspicion and something else. Fear. I was just cleaning," Claire stammered, fumbling to gather the papers. Kane snatched them back. Behind him stood Michael Grant, the quiet production chief. His eyes narrowed, not with accusation, but curiosity. "You speak German?" Kane sneered. "Yes, sir. I studied legal translation before." "Before you landed a mop," he laughed. "All right, then, Miss Translator. Since you're so clever, why don't you translate the entire contract? We could all use a laugh." He tossed the documents onto the table with mock grandeur. "By tomorrow. Surprise me." Then he turned and stormed out. Claire stood still, gripping the mop handle as if it were the only thing keeping her upright. Michael Grant lingered for a moment, then looked her in the eye and said, almost gently, "Take the papers. You'll need them." That night, the janitor's closet became a war room. She stayed long after the last worker had gone home, sitting under a flickering bulb with nothing but an old notebook, a red pen, and her memory. The words came back, the structure, the logic of legalese. Her hands shook, not with fear, but with purpose. By midnight, she was halfway through the translation. That's when she found it. Clause 12, Section 3b, a ticking bomb buried in bureaucracy. If misrepresentation is detected, the German side reserves the right to install a temporary executive proficient in legal German to stabilize operations. Claire's breath caught. Could she, an invisible janitor, become the key to saving the factory? Or was she already marked as a threat? Clare didn't sleep that night. She sat at the tiny kitchen table in her dimly lit apartment, hunched over the translated contract, red circles scrawled over damning phrases. Her mother, Margaret, dozed in the next room, the soft hum of her oxygen machine the only sound in the silence. But inside Claire's head, a storm raged. The clause was no misunderstanding. It was real. If the German investors discovered false financial data, and they would, they had every right to demand the director's removal, and they would need someone who understood both German and legal frameworks to help transition. Someone like her. But she was just the janitor. The next morning, Claire walked into the break room at Brightwell with the contract stuffed deep in her tote bag. No one paid her any mind, as always, invisible, unimportant. But when she passed Michael Grant in the hallway, he gave her a small nod, a silent reminder he hadn't forgotten yesterday, and he was watching. Back in the executive building, the air felt heavier, more electric. Everyone was preparing for the arrival of the Schultz GmbH delegation. Windows sparkled. Flowers had been arranged. Even Linda Carter, the haughty secretary, had ditched her usual gumshoeing and now wore a designer blazer 2 sizes too tight. Claire was wiping down the conference table when Kane's voice snapped through the doorway like a whip. "You have my translation, Miss Dawson?" Claire turned, holding the folder close to her chest. "Yes, sir." He grabbed it without a thank you, flipping through pages. His eyes narrowed. The more he read, the paler he got. Then, suddenly, he slammed the folder on the table and turned on her. "What exactly are you trying to do here?" he growled. "I translated it." "That's what you asked for," Claire replied, voice steady. Kane's lips curled. "And what made you highlight Clause 12? It's the only clause that could sink this deal. If the Germans run an audit and find inconsistencies, they'll invoke it. And you think they'll find something?" "I think they're already suspicious," she said quietly. "That's why they're coming." For a moment, there was silence. Then Kane chuckled, dark, bitter. "You think you're the hero in some corporate fairy tale, don't you? You're nothing, Dawson. A glorified maid with a dictionary. You don't know the first thing about keeping a company afloat. You want to save this place? Stay out of it." He walked out, slamming the door behind him. Claire stood alone in the silence, hands shaking, not with fear, but rage. Later that afternoon, as snow began to fall in soft waves outside the tall windows, she knocked on the door of Susan Whitmore, the chief accountant. Susan looked surprised to see her, but didn't wave her away. "I need to talk to you," Claire said. "It's about the contract and the numbers you've been told to report." Susan stiffened. She stared at Claire for a long time, then slowly closed the office door and motioned her inside. They talked. At first, the older woman was defensive, but when Claire showed her the clause in the original German and translated it with precision, something shifted in Susan's eyes. A memory stirred of a time when numbers mattered more than survival, when honesty was currency. Susan opened a drawer and slid a folder toward Claire. "This is what the books really look like," she said. "If the Germans see what Kane's giving them, and then they see this, they'll walk. Or worse. Then we give them the truth," Claire whispered. Susan shook her head. "You don't understand. People could lose their jobs. You could lose more." "I already lost everything once," Claire said. I won't stay quiet again. That night, Claire sat in the public library, the only place in town with working internet and some level of anonymity. She wrote a letter in German to Henry Steinman, the head of the Schultz GmbH delegation. She didn't accuse anyone. She didn't dramatize. She laid out the facts, the suspicious numbers, the risk in Clause 12, and the potential consequences for everyone: workers, engineers, even the town itself if the contract was built on lies. She attached her translation. She attached photos of the original and Susan's real financials. Then she hesitated, fingers trembling above the keyboard. Sending this could mean war or redemption. She hit send. 3 days passed. The air in the plant grew tighter. Kane walked with his chin higher, barking orders louder. Claire returned to mopping floors, pretending nothing had changed. But something had. On the 4th day, Linda Carter's voice trembled over the loudspeaker. All department heads to the main hall for a company address. The hall filled fast. Workers stood along the walls. The Germans had arrived. Claire spotted them instantly, 3 well-dressed men, sharp eyes scanning every detail. And in the center, standing tall and composed, was Henry Steinman. Kane took the stage with a politician's poise. Today marks the beginning of a bold new chapter for Brightwell Electronics, his voice boomed. His words were rehearsed. But then Steinman raised a hand. "Mr. Kane," he said, his accent precise but strong, "before we sign anything, we would like to ask about your reported production numbers. They seem overly optimistic." Kane froze. For a second, everything in the room held its breath. "I can assure you," Kane began, but Steinman cut him off. "We've requested access to all financial records. We've also reviewed this contract in its entirety, including Clause 12, and we've received independent translations." Kane's face drained of color. Claire, standing in the back near the exit, felt the room tilt. "We'll be conducting a full audit," Steinman said, "and depending on what we find, we may invoke our contractual right to request new management." Kane's jaw clenched. "Who gave you that translation?" Steinman didn't answer, but Michael Grant, standing beside him, turned his head just slightly toward the back of the room, toward Claire. Her stomach dropped. She wasn't invisible anymore. Kane followed the glance. And then it happened. His eyes landed on Claire, and something inside him cracked. "You," he said, pointing a shaking finger. "You think you can take me down? You think a janitor can play corporate spy?" Claire didn't speak. She didn't need to. Steinman stepped forward. "We are not interested in hierarchy, Mr. Kane. We are interested in honesty." Security moved. The room erupted, some gasped, some applauded. Kane shouted, red-faced, as he was escorted out. Claire remained still, watching, breathing. Later that day, as the sun set over the icy streets of Springfield, Steinman requested a private meeting. In the same boardroom she had once scrubbed, he sat across from Claire. "You knew the risks," he said. "But you spoke anyway." "I had to," she replied. "Too many people depend on this place." He smiled. "We're appointing interim management during this transition. We need someone to serve as a legal liaison to help us navigate the process. Someone who knows the language, the law, the truth." Claire froze. "Are you offering me the position?" "I'm asking if you'll accept it." For a moment, she saw herself reflected in the boardroom's glass. No longer just a woman in a janitor's uniform, but something more. "Yes," she said. She left the room not just with a new job, but a new life. And yet, she knew this was only the beginning. Do you think Claire is ready for what comes next? Or has she just stepped into even deeper danger? Snow had melted into slush by the time Claire stepped into her new office. It wasn't anything grand, a repurposed conference room with a single desk and a dusty bookshelf. But to her, it was everything. Just weeks ago, she was scrubbing these floors. Now she was seated across from international executives, reviewing legal terms, translating real-time negotiations, and building the future of a company that once treated her like a shadow. But as the weeks passed and the audit unfolded, it became clear that the damage ran deeper than anyone imagined. Hidden debts, ghost contracts, entire warehouses of equipment listed on reports, but nowhere to be found. The fallout was swift. Richard Kane was officially removed. Investigations were opened. Suppliers were re-evaluated. For a time, Brightwell Electronics teetered on the edge. It was not the glorious rise Clare had hoped for. It was a long, painful rebuilding process, but she showed up every day, her hair tied in the same practical bun, her notepad full of annotations in both English and German. Michael Grant stood by her side through every meeting, every challenge, every whispered doubt about her authority. He never once questioned her right to lead. One night, after a 12-hour day of contract reviews, Clare found him waiting by the elevator with 2 coffees in hand. "You look like you haven't blinked since Tuesday," he said with a tired grin. She laughed for the first time in days. It was small, but it felt real. Later, as they walked to the factory floor, now slowly humming back to life, Michael asked, "Do you ever regret it? Sending that letter?" Clare paused, watching the young workers in safety vests carrying new shipments into a repaired warehouse. "Not once," she said. "This place is finally becoming what it was meant to be: honest, sustainable, human." 3 months later, Brightwell landed its first major export contract with a German tech partner. The new financial reports, clean, audited, and modest, brought cautious applause from their board. Bonuses returned, salaries were raised, safety programs were restored, the cafeteria got real coffee again, and something even more rare appeared in the hallways: pride. Susan Whitmore, the chief accountant who once buried the real numbers out of fear, retired with dignity. On her last day, she stopped by Clare's office with a small box of pastries and tears in her eyes. "You gave me back my integrity," she whispered. "That's a gift most people never get to return." Clare didn't respond. She simply hugged her. But not everyone was celebrating. There were whispers, former allies of Kane who resented the new order. Old habits that died hard. Resistance that came in smaller, quieter forms. A delayed shipment here. A missed memo there. Clare knew change would never come without friction. And yet, she never backed down. Her biggest test came during a customs crisis. An incoming shipment of critical components was held at port due to paperwork errors. It was sabotage. She knew it. And she had a hunch who might be behind it. Kane still had friends, still had influence. But with Michael's help and a quiet phone call to their contact in the Department of Commerce, the issue was resolved within 72 hours. That night, when the shipment finally arrived and production resumed, the entire team clapped in the break room. It wasn't loud or showy, but Clare felt every hand, every smile. Not for the title she held, but for the fight she never gave up. One afternoon in May, Clare brought her mother to the factory. Margaret walked slowly now, but she walked. The surgery, paid for through Clare's new salary and bonuses, had worked. Workers greeted her like a local legend. Clare led her to the executive floor, where once, years ago, she'd stood trembling as Kane mocked her education. Now her mother sat in Clare's office, sipping tea by the window, watching forklifts dance below. "You know," Margaret said softly, "you're not just running a company. You're teaching people something far more important." Clare nodded. "That truth matters. That people matter," her mother said, smiling. Summer came, and with it, an anniversary. 1 year since Clare Dawson had sent a letter that changed everything. The company held a quiet celebration: no fireworks, no speeches, just people who knew the story, who lived it, who helped write it. Steinman visited again, this time smiling more than frowning. "Your team is ahead of projections," he said over dinner. "Brightwell is a success story we didn't expect, but one we're proud to be part of." Clare thanked him, but she didn't feel pride. Not yet. Pride came later, when things were stable. When the next generation could walk into the factory and not worry about losing their jobs. When women like her weren't seen as invisible, but essential. One Friday, as Clare walked out of the building, she passed a new janitor, young, quiet, unsure. Their eyes met. Claire smiled, offered a friendly nod. "Welcome to Brightwell," she said. The girl blinked, surprised. "Thank you, ma'am." Claire turned back to the parking lot, her keys jangling in her hand, heart full. This wasn't a fairy tale. This was real life, and she had earned every moment. Now, let me ask you something. What did this story make you feel? Do you believe that courage from the most unexpected places can truly change everything? If you were moved by Claire's journey, comment 100 below to let us know. And tell me, where are you watching this story from? I'd love to know which part of the world you're joining us from. Don't forget to share this story if it touched your heart. Someone out there might need the hope inside.